Yeah, my name is Nehemiah Andrews. Can you guys all hear me okay? Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to just chat about Import.io. It's a really easy to use web scraper that basically takes web scraping and makes it non-developer-y, and then helps you turn pretty much the web, or it adds an API to the web, I guess is the way I like to look at it. So I'm just going to kind of dive in and give you a rundown on what it does and the different tools they have available to you. They have several different options for scraping web pages. For those of you who don't know, scraping a web page is basically using some sort of software to programmatically extract data from HTML and HTML, JavaScript, CSS elements within an individual web page. And I'm going to share my screen right now so you can kind of see the different options that they provide. They've got things known as a magic API, an extractor, a connector, and a crawler. Those are just different ways to pull data out of individual web pages. And I am not sure how exactly do we share our screen. Oh, there's a big button. Sweet. There we go. So, here's the Import.io website. They've got one really simple way to get data out. They use IKEA page as an example. You just enter in a URL, and they're going to scrape the data out of the page. If we just click that, it'll show you what they do really simply. This took an IKEA page and turned all the data in that page into a table. And then they generate an API so you can extract that data through as a JSON object or something. A project that I was recently doing at work was a coworker of mine asked for some data about some phone installers from a specific website that he had. So we went to this website, and it's really a pain because you can enter in a zip code, you can search, and you can find an individual installer. It shows some data about them, but it's paginated, and it's not truly paginated. It's like some JavaScript pagination, so you're not actually flipping to a new page. If you go to an individual installer's site, you'll see up here they've got some keys that aren't really easily parsable, because you've got an address ID, which is some random unique value, and then this other ID value up here, which is another random unique key. There's not any way for me to know this, unless I wrote the database. So what I did with this was built a little bit of an extractor within Import.io, and I won't run through all the steps because that'll take a little while. But basically, maybe spent half an hour, 45 minutes working on this, and from that page, managed to generate this table right here. And this is a table of all of the data that you just saw in that other browser tab. And you have to go through and kind of pick out the objects sometimes, the different HTML elements, so that the application knows what you're looking for. But that's just a point and click interface, so that's super simple to deal with. It'll bring up a web page, you click on an element, and it finds all other common elements or similar ones on the page. And then you add in the data, give it a header, a column name, which I named all of these myself when I was building this out. It'll automatically pull the names from the elements within the page for you if you don't want to go through that effort. But this is what I built, and then if I go to this next tab over, you can see this JSON object that it generated. So that's all of the data I was looking for from that website as an object I can work with. You can export into, obviously JSON is readily available. They also have a couple of other export options. You can create data sets, so that's its own independent thing you can pull data from. They have a simple API integration. You click that button, and it just gives you a URL for a RESTful GET request. Super simple. And that is basically how you, on the Import.io side, set up a scraper to pull data off the web. So what I ended up doing, I'm still working on this app, so it's not fully functional. I'm going to show you a little bit of the code that I wrote. We got this basic controller. I just kind of stripped out the individual parts of the string, because if you saw that API string is pretty long. There's a API GUID involved. There is a user ID and an API key set of pushed them into environment variables, and then, concatenated this into a single string, added a couple of gems to my application so that I could use a REST client, and then passed in this REST string, and then I parsed it with a JSON gem. Really super simple, this part of it, maybe half an hour to get set up, figure out where the gems are and whatnot. And then I'm just passing this @parsed object into my view. And now I've got a JSON object, which if you know how to parse, how to walk through a JSON object, super simple. I just find the individual headers, which if we go look back here, I'm just keying on each of these fields and saying I want to display it. And now this is up on Heroku. If I just refresh this page, it might take a second, and this is obviously quick and dirty. If anything, I'd probably want to take these data values and push them into a database and then add some attributes to them, which is really where the power of this is. If I see data on the web, you can go get it, right? We can all open a web browser, type something in, and see something. But what I want to do is take this data from this website. It returns these different phone installers to me. And maybe I want to call somebody and say, hey, can you do this job for me? And if they say yes, and if they're good, then I want to be able to make a note of that. And you'll have some good usable business data. So then I can use this import.io, pull that data into my own database, and then, using all the tools that we've been learning here, push it into a usable web app. So yeah, this is just, again, this is not very complicated code. There are just a couple of gems, and the API call, since it's RESTful, is really super simple. You don't even need a dedicated import.io gem in your application. This is just, pretty standard off-the-shelf Ruby on Rails application. So that is basically what I did here. I mean, I could take a minute since I'm probably running up on my 7 minutes, but I'll run over by just a minute or so and kind of walk through the setup and training part of this. That'll just take a minute. This is an application you can download and install on your local machine. You can do a little bit through the web, but the more involved stuff, you actually have to download this application. I took this URL that I found from the website, pasted it into the application, so I want to actually, train the application, find the stuff for me. You go to the site, or you enter the URL, browse the page. It's got its own built-in browser. Tell it what type of extractor you want to use. You can do a little bit of reading on the site to figure out exactly how they all work. I know I want to do a connector. I don't need to authenticate. So that's cool to get you past authentication if you need to do that. And then I'm actually going to say playback mode, which I already recorded something, but you could go to a page, do some recording, actually creates a macro for you so that you can go through a couple of steps if you really need to. And again, I've got a URL pattern. So this page that I go to, this particular URL, I've just created an input variable, which will be part of my actual API call. And once I put this in here, I've added an input. You can see it there. Take me to the next step. Ask me if there's a lot of things I want to find, or one. I know that. And you just kind of click through a wizard. Tell if there's actual pagination, which trial and error told me that no, it doesn't have pagination because of the route that I'm going. And then it says, let's train it. So let's get some example data. I punch in an example. I query. So this is basically querying the API that I'm building. And yes, it shows me the data that I want to see. And then this is where it's actually pretty awesome. I find an individual element that I want to find. I highlight it. I click it, and I say train. Hey, I found one of them. I click another one. Click train rows. I found 2. Click this third one. It's got 10 now. We found similar elements. There's probably a little bit of variation in the code here. Then I click this one. If I hit train again, now I've got 30 rows. So it found all these elements on this page. I've got all 30. And now you can go through and add the individual columns. And these are the things you already saw that I had. I had add column, I call it company. I'll click this. I've got phone. And then if I want to go back and train these on something else, I click on another company, I select the column, I click train. Now it found the company for every single element on the page. It is the same thing with phone. Select phone column, hit train, and that's that. Then once I do that, you can go to several different examples so it really figures out how it works. And then that's basically the process I went through to generate this API right here. So that is Import.io in about a 10-minute nutshell.
That was awesome.
Mind blown.
I do have one big question. How does it work with infinite scrolling sites? So the big problem with some scrapers is that you have to figure out how to handle infinite scrolling. So you just scroll and scroll and scroll. There's no page end. Have you come across a website that handles this? I was looking for one a few weeks ago. I wanted to build a scraper, but I can't remember what the site was for, so now I can't even see if we can do it as an example.
I honestly haven't tried it yet. How is the infinite scrolling implemented? What technology do they use to do that?
JavaScript.
Okay, so I know that in the desktop application, when you go to like if I canceled out of the connector here, I don't know if it'll even let me cancel out from where I'm at. I'd probably have to relaunch it. But in the desktop app, when you first load a page and you're building up your when you're building up the actual application or the API you're trying to do, it'll let you switch between parsing CSS or HTML or JavaScript. So I would imagine if you throw in, and it's just got a little button at the top you click to switch between the three. So I'd imagine if you throw in an infinite scrolling site and trip it to the JavaScript, it'll probably parse that code and at least give it a shot.
That's awesome.
How did you find out about this? Because like I've been doing scraping for so long, and this is just so cool. Like, how did you find out about it?
Google. I was just trying to figure out how to scrape some sites. The original use case that I had was, my company does IT staffing and that sort of thing, and we were doing a job for one location for a company that had like 30 or 40 sites. And I asked them to give me a spreadsheet of the phone numbers and addresses of all of their sites, and they couldn't do it for me. And I was just like, why? Why not? So then I realized that they had a search by location feature on their website, and I punched in an address, and I looked at it, I thought, well, maybe I can scrape this data. So I just did a little bit of research, and yeah.
So cool.
About it.
Well, I just tested it on Twitter and it works. So
Nice.
Twitter's infinite scroll. Awesome.
That's pretty
Anybody
awesome.
else have any questions?
All I know is we never have to write a script again to scrape a page if we need something. Saves so much time.
I have you might have said this before, but how much is it? Does it cost any money?
No, it's totally free.
Oh, that's awesome.
They do have an enterprise version. I haven't really bothered to figure out what the enterprise version gives me beyond what the free version gives me, because I've been able to do everything that I need to with the free version. So
yeah, I think what they do for the enterprise is like big data solutions. So if you have huge databases, that's when they give you the tool so you can build APIs to query stuff really fast. And like for everyone else, it's just free. So
Cool.
You use that, and then you're a big company with big databases, and then you want to keep using it.
Yeah.
Is there any way to tie in authentication with it?
yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. That's even
Yeah, so
better.
when you're going through and building it, because that was another thing I was doing, is one of the systems that we do is a hosted or a hybrid hosted voice platform or VoIP platform. And the company themselves was giving me, or the vendor was giving me troubles with being able to watch their dashboard from multiple sites at the same time. So I kind of built a dashboard with this to scrape their site after authenticating and hit their dashboard and then aggregate that for multiple systems in one table, basically. So it's just when you're going through the wizard setting up one of those scrapers or extractors on the front end, it'll just say, do you need to authenticate? And if you hit yes, then it'll let you punch in your credentials and go from there.
That's awesome. I'm sold on it. Any other questions? No? All right.
I think everyone is doing the magic import right now.
Right.
Everybody will be distracted.
Everybody post your magic API in the chat so we can see what we've all found.
Yeah.